This is Bloomberg Markets. I'm Scarlett Fu. President Trump is speaking right now after signing executive orders blocking California EV mandates. On Israel, he says that an Israeli strike on Iran is not imminent, but, quote, could happen. He says that he would love to avoid the conflict with Iran. When it comes to foreign students, the president is saying that he is in favor of letting foreign students stay in the U.S., and he will probably do something about talented immigrants. Again, his comments on foreign students after the Education Department and Secretary of State were making moves towards making it more difficult for students with student visas to continue studying in the U.S. We'll continue to keep an eye on these latest developments and, of course, bring you more headlines as they cross. Now, outside of the president's comments, we have been following stablecoin legislation making its way through Congress. Just yesterday, the Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent testified before lawmakers about stablecoins' potential. Take a listen.
Stablecoin legislation backed by U.S. Treasuries or T-bills will create a market that will expand U.S. dollar usage via these stablecoins all around the world. And I think that $2 trillion is a very reasonable number, and I could see it greatly exceeding that.
For more on where we stand with stablecoin legislation, let's bring in now Nathan Dean. Nathan covers financials and policy as a senior analyst at Bloomberg Intelligence. Where are we with this legislation? Because it was a big story about a week ago, and I know that the wheels of Congress move slowly here. Are we, pretty much done with in terms of markup?
So we're getting very close to Senate passage. So last night, Senator John Thune finaled cloture, which essentially is the start of the Senate voting process. And 68 came in forth and approved this bill, which was enough to get past the 60-vote threshold. So there was significant Democratic support for this bill. Now, we think there's going to be a final vote probably on Monday, and then this goes to the House. I don't anticipate the House is going to alter this legislation, if at all. And so we think this bill is going to become law probably late June or more likely July. And this really does remove a lot of regulatory uncertainty, especially for companies like Circle. And now they can go forth and essentially know what the rules of the road are when it comes to U.S. regulatory policy. Yeah,
definitely good news for Circle, as you mentioned. Any other companies that would be primary beneficiaries of this?
Well, Coinbase and Robinhood, from a certain standpoint in terms of, the usage of stablecoins could increase usage of crypto, but they are really looking for another separate piece of crypto legislation. It's called the Clarity Act, and this is going through the House. We actually think this is going to go much of a slower process because even though Democrats were on board with this idea that regulatory gaps existed for the stablecoin market, they're less certain of that for the rest of the broader crypto market. So I actually think that bill will pass, but we're telling our clients wait for the first half of next year for those bills that would give the same regulatory clarity or similar regulatory clarity to Coinbase and Robinhood.
Okay, so the first bill, the one that is closer to passing, getting through the Senate and then moving on to the House, deals with stablecoin. The second one is broader, deals with digital currencies overall. Is that right?
That's absolutely right. I mean, the biggest thing that these companies want is regulatory clarity because they don't want to return to a scenario where the SEC could come forth and say, look, here's an enforcement action because you're not following the regulations. Now, it's unlikely in a Trump administration, but they need Congress to come forth and pass this so that if a future administration decides to change their mind, they can at least go forth and, put out capital knowing that they're not going to have this enforcement actions. But when it comes to stablecoins, $10 billion and up, those types of stablecoin issuers would have to register with the federal government or like Federal Reserve or the Office of the Comptroller of the Currency. If you're under $10 billion, you'd have to issue with a state regulator, and you have to be 100% backed up by high quality liquid assets, and you can't pay yields. So, there's some discussions about potentially altering that in the House, but I don't think the House is going to go there. I think they want to see this over the finish line as well.
All right, good stuff. Nathan Dean, thank you so much for that once over here on the latest stablecoin legislation. Nathan Dean with Bloomberg Intelligence.